tell me if Nancy Brisker is on? And she's just observing. Okay, they're both on?
Nancy? Okay, so just keep it on?
Turn the volume up on the phone
Yep, you're on speaker.
and turn it around maybe. Okay, everyone, are we ready to go? Council members? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Lovely invited guests. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the meeting of the Borough Council meeting for the Borough of Peapack and Gladstone. Tonight is April 11, 2023. I would appreciate if you would silence your cell phones, as I am now doing, and I welcome you. Susie, would you please read the sunshine notice?
Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of the 2023 meeting date was published in the Courier News and the Burnersville News on December 8, 2022, and posted at the Municipal Complex and the Borough Library. Action may be taken.
Would everybody please stand and join me in a pledge of allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
thank you. When you're ready, Susie, a roll call, please.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Here.
Councilman Lemma?
Here.
Councilwoman Murphy?
Here.
Councilman Cortella?
Here.
Council President Sweeney?
Here.
Councilwoman Weibel?
Here.
Mayor Corleano?
Here. And would let the record show that Nancy Brisker, our administrator, is observing via telephone. And of course, Susie, Giovanni, you're with us tonight as well. Okay, I'd like to open the meeting to public comments, 5 minutes per person on non-agenda items only. See, name at the microphone, please, name and address.
John Kapler, 25 Holland Avenue. We were hoping to get a ANJEC grant on the...
It's already handled.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I handled it earlier today. Okay, anybody else from the audience? Do we have any guests online tonight, Susie?
No.
Okay.
Who's PGS? There's a PGS, Tom Scanlon, but they're all muted.
Well, then let me ask them. Is there anybody online who has a public comment on non-agenda items? Seeing none, I'll close that section of the meeting. Next up, council members. Tonight, we have a presentation. This presentation came about as a result of my meeting the executive director of the New Jersey Highlands Council, Benjamin Spinelli, or Ben Spinelli, at the New Jersey League of Municipalities Conference last November. And we saw my name badge and he said, wow, you know, my office is right up the road, you're within the Highlands region. Let me come talk to you, there's perhaps some very good things we could help you with. So being open-minded, I said, why not? And I will tell you all, when I became a councilman, this is going on almost 10 years ago, another councilman said to me, oh, you don't want anything to do with Highlands. And this is, of course, before Ben's tenure. And I don't know why he said that to me, but I had that idea in my head. And Ben is here to dispel that idea from my head tonight. Hopefully. So I'm going to let you get up and speak, Ben. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Judy Thornton, Principal Planner with the Highlands, and I'm the liaison to your municipality.
Okay, now I'm going to try to get your presentation up, so bear with me a second.
My Hulu password is...
Okay, I'll take that. with me. Okay, council members, I know I can connect to this one. Can everyone see this sufficiently? And you also have paper copies. Okay, so this is really for the benefit of those in our audience. Eric, would you mind, or John, would you mind lowering the lights in the room there, please? Does that work for you?
Sure does.
Okay, awesome. That's good.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. And it's just an example of why it's always dangerous to go to the League of Municipalities, right? But thank you so much for having me here this evening. Just by way of background, I think some of you may know, I was also the mayor of Chester Township for 9 years before that's ancient history now. But, before I became executive director at the Highlands Council. The reason I came here tonight is to try to give you some background on the work that we do, to point out some of the advantages that there are of working with us, and I frankly to dispel some of the misconceptions about what working with the Highlands really means. Is there a way that we could advance?
Yeah,
that?
just tell me to move forward.
Go right ahead. Okay, so just by way of background, the Highlands came about in 2004. It was a reaction to what you see there on that animated GIF that was prepared by Rutgers back in 2000 that demonstrated that the area of New Jersey that was the primary water supply for the majority of the state was under siege. The amount of development that was happening on an annual basis was fairly alarming, and it put the future of the state at risk. And as a result, the Highlands Act was passed in an effort to try to stem the tide of rampant development and to protect that vital water resource. The Highlands itself isn't just limited to New Jersey. It's really a 4-state region that extends all the way from the Pennsylvania-Maryland border through New Jersey, through the Hudson Valley of New York into northern Connecticut. And if you follow it that entire way, you'll see that it actually is the place where the water supply comes from for all the major East Coast cities. You look at Washington, Philadelphia, New York, so there's a real science behind trying to protect the region. That being said, the Highlands is a fairly complex place. There are 88 municipalities in the New Jersey section. It covers about 7 counties, and Mayor, you can advance it from here, please. And from these 7 counties, we supply the drinking water for about 70% of New Jersey's residents, all the way down to Gloucester County. Certainly all 800,000 people who live in the Highlands rely on the region for their water, but the major cities of northern New Jersey. But it's really a vital part of New Jersey being a livable and sustainable place for the long term. In addition to the drinking water supply, it's a place of great environmental resources that you see all around you here. You've got a great town here. The forests, the rivers, the streams, the natural communities, the agricultural lands, and for you, you're one of the many small towns of the Highlands that really is a gem within the region. And I think, again, I'm not telling you anything you don't know about yourselves. So, okay, keep going. So, we've taken this actually comes from your website, right? A leafy green historic town nestled in a quiet eddy of the beautiful hills of northern Somerset County, right? You've got a wonderful downtown. You've got 2 train stations. It's got a lot of character. And when we talk about the Highlands, a lot of people think about it in terms of the environmental resources, and certainly that's the primary focus of the act, but also the sense of place that the Highlands represents, right? Within that region of 88 municipalities, right? Sustainability means a lot of things. It means sustainable from an environmental standpoint. It means sustainable from an economic standpoint. And the role that the centers of the region play really is a major part of that economic sustainability as well as the environmental sustainability. And so when we work with municipalities, we try to identify which piece of that 88-piece jigsaw puzzle you are, and I said this, the zen of planning, right? Be the best piece that you can be. And so we bring our resources, our expertise, and our financial resources to the municipalities that work with us to help you do just that. There's a lot of, right, Judy is just one of our terrific, talented planners who would be working with you. But we bring a science staff, we bring a GIS staff, we bring the resources of the entire state that we can marshal to come to try to solve some of your problems, to try to help you navigate around obstacles that you might have or get questions answered. But by and large, what we try to do is help you plan for the long term of your town, to make sure that you're taking advantage of all the resources that you have, that you can do the best that you can. And a lot of the ordinary planning things that you would probably be doing anyway, we'll pay for. Right? That's maybe the biggest incentive that we have, although I do believe that the advantage of working closely with us and having that us work hand in hand with you to assist you is really a big deal. But that financial component of it, if you were going to redo your master plan, if you're going to redo your open space plan, those are things that you would ordinarily pay for on your own. When you're working with us, we'll pay for that, and that's probably one of the biggest incentives that we have. So everything that we do is based upon the Highlands Regional Master Plan. When the Act came into being, one of the first tasks of the Highlands Council was to do a scientific study of the region, to assemble all the underlying environmental data, and to put together a comprehensive regional master plan that's better than anything that New Jersey's ever done before, probably better than anything that most any state in the country has done before in terms of its the depth that it goes into. It's a forward-thinking document. It's got a tremendous number of very solid policies and goals that are designed to plan the region for the long term. And that really will be what informs how we would go forward with you. That being said, there's not going to be a lot of mystery about working with Peapack Gladstone. You're a center. You've been a center for 200 years, right? And so what we would do would be looking to take on the ordinary planning tasks that a center of this nature would have. We would look at things that you've done. How is your sewer and water system doing? Or do you have a walkable community? Have you connected to your train station adequately? Do you want to be a transit village going forward? How are your parks doing? All the things that make a town livable, we would look at. The streetscaping, if you wanted to plan ahead for the next 50 or 100 years, and that's the other side of this too. This is not a one and done. You come in, you check off the boxes. Thanks for coming by. Here's your parting gift. It's a long-term relationship that we work with you as you evolve over time, right? The planning in and of itself is an iterative process. It's not static or set in one point in time. It changes as the ethic of your town changes, as conditions change, and we can be there to help you adapt to whatever changes that come up. But we look at a number of different things. We look at the natural resources of your town. We look at, again, as I said before, you may not, I don't know if you even think about it. You've got the North Branch of the Raritan, you've got Peapack Brook, both running through your town, both major contributors to New Jersey's water supply. They're major sources for the drinking reservoirs as part of the Raritan system, right here. You have some agricultural resources. You certainly have historic and cultural resources. You certainly have transportation resources, like most towns would be very jealous of you. We look at future land use and sustainable economic development, but again, it's mostly about trying to plan out the character of your town for the long term. And the regional master plan has elements of it that can address that broad range of planning concepts. So when the regional master plan was done, this is just to really point out where maybe perhaps some of the misconceptions come from. The major way that we categorized land use in the regional master plan was through the creation of land use capability zones, where we looked at what was on the ground, we looked at the environmental resources that were there, we looked at the built environment, and came up with a series of different designations for the land within the Highlands that can be translated somewhat loosely into zoning. And what you see here is the depiction of the entire 88 municipality Highlands region, running from about Regalsville in Hunterdon County in the south, all the way up to Mahwah and Oakland in the northeast in Bergen County. And you know, it's a little hard to discern, but if you go to the next slide, what you'll see is that I've broken it down to how it addresses your town in particular. So what you see there in the yellow and the orange basically represents what we consider the existing community zone. Those are places where development already exists, where infrastructure already exists, where development can be accommodated best. And I think if you know, you know your town. You know, looking at that's basically your main street, your downtown, the area around the train station, your built areas. And what you see in brown and green, brown is our conservation zone that takes in a lot of the agricultural resources. Green is the protection zone that'll take in your parks and forest resources. And again, you know that they're there. And so when you see what we put on our mapping, it looks a lot like what your mapping probably does as well. So you're not going to find a lot of conflicts. In fact, if you go on to the next slide of
Can I stop you for a second?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
When you say that likely few conflicts, what happens if there is a conflict?
Well, a couple of things, Councilman. We would analyze them first of all to see if they really are conflicts, because a lot of this mapping was done from a very high level, right? We think that it's fairly accurate, but there's always going to be inaccuracies when you look at something from the 30,000 foot level and you zoom in and you get down on the ground and you see, well, maybe they captured that a little wrong from the aerial photography, or maybe it wasn't ground truth appropriately. When we find those conflicts, we can resolve them and change the mapping to make them reflect what the reality is. Right? So that's the main way that we would see it. If I were going to guess what other conflicts there might be some. When we look at the protection and the conservation zones, which are the places where the environmental resources exist, you've got them tagged in your zoning as your rural estate zoning, which is probably appropriate for it. The only thing that might be, and I'm not sure until we take a good look at it, is that our recommended lot sizes may be slightly larger than what you've zoned for. But even that's not a non-starter or a problem. Like, those are things we can work around. Mostly we're looking at septic densities and well densities when we analyze something like that, to make sure that they're sustainable and that you're not overbuilding in an area where it really can't handle that capacity for the long term. But again, we don't know until we look at it. But again, my feeling is, from looking at the lot sizes that you have, I don't see it off the top of my head. And Judy took a look at it today as well.
Yeah, it's not dramatic at all. And one thing I would point out is where we really would want to look for conflicts to understand them is where you want to do new development. Because existing development is
There's not a whole lot of room for new development.
That's the thing. That's kind of what I saw.
Yep.
It really narrows down the field unless you're intending to do some substantial new development.
The bulk of our new development is affordable housing.
Yeah.
And
And we'll work with you on that too.
And it's funny you bring that up. I try to steer clear of that a little bit, because it becomes such a hot button issue. But one of the things that we're working on, look, I've been at the Highlands for 8 months now. One of the first things that I recognized from the round 3 affordable housing settlements were that those settlements were out of line with the science of the regional master plan, and that we should have been, the Highlands should have been at the table when those settlements were reached, because we do a scientifically based build out for your community. We look at where the available appropriate land is, but based upon those two factors, we would then determine what your actual build out should be, what your affordable build out should be based upon that actual build out, where those units should be built, how many of them should be built, and how they should be built, right? We always focus on the number all the time. It's so much more than that, right? It's the methodology, it's the location, right? It's making sure that everything is accurate and sustainable. And what we saw, one of the first things I did was ask the staff to go compare the round 3 build out settlements that have been reached throughout the region, and compare it to the build outs that we had determined through the Highlands Regional Master Plan. We found that almost half of the municipalities in the Highlands had settled for 100 to 125% of their build out in affordable units alone, right? And that's not right. So if only a fraction of those units were built through an inclusionary development methodology, where you had a 5-to-1 offset, that you're talking about blowing through the build out by 300, 400, or 500%. which is when you look at right, go back to the beginning of the presentation. Why was this region set aside? It was set aside because of the environmental imperatives that were important to the entire state, not just to the Highlands. It's absolutely important to us because we live here, but to the future of the entire state, making sure that the Highlands can provide for the 800,000 people who live here, as well as being at the playground and exporting drinking water to the 7 million other people who rely upon it, is a very difficult puzzle. And it makes it impossible to solve that puzzle if you start to throw in a factor where you're going to go through the scientifically developed build-out by that quantum. It's just not sustainable. It's not a good idea. It's ill-advised. And so when what we're working on right now, we've just put out an RFQ for technical support to put forth a technical and guidance document for the 88 Highlands municipalities to help them formulate the round 4 affordable housing obligations going forward, which is coming up very quickly in 2025. We're starting now because we think it's probably going to take us about a year to get that document together and then be able to present it to the town so that you can then use it as you formulate your affordable housing plan going forward. And again, we wouldn't leave you alone in isolation to do that. We would work with you. If there were any questions about it, if it came up in litigation, we're going to be there to stand by you, to stand by our work, really, to say that this isn't something that we just came up with out of the blue. This is important for the future of the state. And that's just one, like I said, that's just one aspect of what we would do to work with you. And I don't want to hold that out there as, you know, over your head, because it gets misinterpreted a lot. But to me, it's the right thing to do, right? To me, it's the absolute only way that you can plan this region going forward. It's the only way that a municipality within the Highlands should be planning its future. And it's an important element of it because it has so much more impact on everything, from infrastructure to the environment to your schools to the economics of your town to what you know, just the future character of your community. That's not to say that it's not a rejection of the constitutional obligation that towns have, and it's probably a good idea to provide for a broad range of housing opportunities in any community. But again, it goes back to the right number, the right place, the right way, and that's what we're striving for. So, what do we bring to the table for you? I went over some of this a little bit, but the big one, to me, the easy one to pick out, and again, I have my own prejudices about what I think we do best, but the grant funding itself. It's non-competitive grant funding. You submit a scope. You identify. We would work with you to come up with a plan on what your priorities are on in your planning scheme, and we would identify tasks that you would do. Your professionals come up with the scope of work that fits within that framework. Judy would review it. She'd make some suggestions, try to guide you to make sure that what you're doing is consistent with the regional master plan. But once that scope of work has been settled on, your professionals do the work. You pay them. You send us the invoice that you just paid them with. Within a week, we get a check out to you, and you're reimbursed for that work. And that's probably like I said, one of the best advantages of working with us. But you get the full technical planning and science expertise of our staff, a wonderfully talented staff who would augment your professionals and be here to work with you hand in hand. We can coordinate the different state agencies that you're going to be working with. If you had a problem with DEP or DOT or New Jersey Transit or you know, any of the other state agencies that you have to deal with on a daily basis, we can convene them, number one, into the same room, or get them at least now today on the same Zoom call, and try to solve your problems as we go forward, right? And again, some of this may be trying to figure out if you've got something that's a good idea, but it's going to be difficult for you. We can figure out how to get around those obstacles. If there's something you want to say no to, we can figure out how to say no to that as well.
Just a quick question. How are you guys funded?
We're funded by the state. We're a state agency.
Okay, so everything's just through the state?
Everything's through the state.
Okay.
And a small fee, user fee.
We were set up with an ongoing source of funding, so every year it's replenished.
Okay.
We've set up the grant program is significant, and we've actually had a tough time spending all the money that's in there every year. So Our goal is to bring as many communities in that are interested to actually, to put that money to good use in the region. And we really are trying hard to focus on the issues that you're interested in and that we're also interested in. So it's our parallel goals and pushing those forward. To the extent you push those forward for you, you're helping the Highlands
That's-
region as well.
That's exactly it. And, Judy's got it right on. Some of it has been, in the past, the Highlands has looked at plan conformance as like I said, it's almost a contest where you have to check off all the boxes and get to the end. I don't look at it that way, and we don't look at it that way now. Every step that you take towards conformance is a step for the region forward. If there's 15 steps that you take and you take 5 of them, we're 5 steps better off. You're 5 steps better off, the state is 5 steps better off, right? And so you pick and choose what you would like to pursue, and we'll help you pursue those goals. In the long run, when you look at that going back to those slides where I matched up where your zoning was, what you're going to see. If I were going to say, do you conform with the Highlands? You're probably pretty close, right? There's not like I said, there's not a lot of deviation between what you do and what we would foresee as the good future for your town. And even there, what's the good future for your town according to us? So it's got to be done in cooperation with you and with in a public process with your citizens, right? And that's really what we would be driving towards. The other thing is that if we Peapack Gladstone would be obviously a real candidate to be designated as a center. It helps you a lot with things like wastewater planning and drinking water planning. It helps you with a lot of things with the DOT, having that designation. That designation means something. Generally, you would have to go to the State Planning Commission for plan endorsement and center designation with them. They're sent, and they, don't get me wrong, they do a terrific job of working with municipalities. But centers at the state plan level expire every 10 years, and you would have to come back. Once you're designated a center under the Highlands, your center never expires.
A question.
Sure.
What does it entail when you become a center, and does that require us to become part of the planning area as opposed to the preservation area as opposed to the
No,
planning area?
it doesn't. So you're all in the planning area.
Yes.
Okay, so you're not in the preservation area border is right up with Chester Township. No, you do not. Right, it's not acknowledgement of being in the preservation area. You're guided by we have certain policies that guide conforming plan area towns. And that goes back to what I was saying before. The only possible there might be a few properties that conflict here and there scattered. There might be some lot size issues that would be at odds. And at odds is a too strong a word. It's probably, you're right, they're probably very close. Like I said, not to the point where it would be anything that would be worth worrying about. Being a center just means that you are going to be recognized that this is the area that you've defined to handle growth. The other thing that's a little different is the state plan centers were designed to capture growth from a different part of town. Look at Bedminster would be a good example, right? They've got their Pluckerman Center. It's designed to transfer growth from the farming areas around it in a big township and concentrate it into one area and kind of shift it back and forth. We would not be looking at something like that for here. First of all, your town really is the center itself. The second is that you regulate the amount of growth that you want in your center. You may not want none, right? You may say, look, the town is I like the size of the town. This fits right. We can plan for a long-term sustained center at this level or at some very low level of growth so that you can actually have some change over time. But that's another major planning imperative difference or approach that we would take. And once you have that, as I said before, once you have that center designation, it qualifies you for working with the state on a lot of different things that you ordinarily wouldn't be able to get. And we're looking at a lot, very busy time for us right now because we're trying to get ahead of a lot of issues that are exploding on the state. The affordable housing being one of them. We're looking at forest management. That's probably not a real concern for you, but what we want to do is put that Highland specific spin on it. So we look at agriculture, forest management, stormwater management. Right, you're going to be facing that, and that's something else we can help you with tremendously as well. We can line you up with money from DEP. We can, well, the best way we do it is we give you the seed money to do your planning and engineering for projects, and then you take that product that you get out of that, and you can then take it to DEP for implementation money. So we work with you to set you up to get the money to do the work that we identify as necessary, and try to pass it off as seamlessly as possible. So that's, and there's a lot of things that are going to be thrown on you that we can help you with. And I guess stormwater is just the latest, right? If you wanted to set up a stormwater utility, we can help you with that. If you wanted to do planning for green infrastructure as part of your streetscaping, we could do that, right? The whole idea is to bring that kind of expertise to the table so that we can assist you in meeting these mandates that are coming down the road at you.
Does the designation in your experience, would the designation as a center offer protection to a municipality from future affordable housing round regulations?
It depends on how we did it, right? Some towns would want to, if there are like a rural town, a real rural town, we have a township with Tewksbury, for example, right? Tewksbury's a big sprawling township with the Oldwick Center within it, right? So they may want to direct whatever affordable housing they build into that center, rather than have it built out in the hinterlands of the town. Here, we would develop as I go back to what I said before, we'll go back to a build out that you had, that scientifically developed build out would inform what your future growth would be. That future growth should inform what your affordable housing obligation would be, and you right size it for what you foresee as the future of your town. And that, this is my legal interpretation of where it would go. I believe it's the correct one. We're going to find out through our affordable housing guidance work that we're going to do. But I believe that when you go back to the Mount Laurel 1 and 2 decisions, they tell you that affordable housing is not an excuse to ignore environmental resources. It's not an excuse to ignore good planning, and it's not an excuse to jumpstart development in areas of the state that are not appropriate for jump-started development. And we're going to use that language to protect the towns of the Highlands to the greatest extent that we can.
And I would just add to that, when we do Highland centers, they are totally driven and tailored to what the municipality wants. You're not required to grow. You're not required to become a metropolis. You're required to do what your community would like to do. And we literally see that as our obligation to get you from here to there, if it's even any different, but to support what your goals are and not to go beyond. When you read the state center guidelines and all their documents, there is language in there that indicates something to the extent that this is where growth shall be encouraged and shall occur. In the Highlands, it's only encouraged to the extent that the municipality wants it to be extended.
Or that the capacity is there to accept it.
And within your capacity.
So it doesn't have the same impact as, say, let be designated a transit village, which we've had planners in the past strongly advised against that designation, because we lose a lot of control over our downtown area. But it doesn't have that. It doesn't have
to be that way. We could. I think we could probably work with them a little bit to make sure they do what you want to do. But that's another story, right? I mean, a lot of times towns do take their hands off. New Jersey Transit owns a lot of property around their train stations, and they control what goes on there. I don't think that's the case here in your town. But yeah, if we would explore it if you wanted to. We don't have to touch it if you don't want to, right? But there might be certain advantages for service.
I want to know more about what it means.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We would explore it, and then you could say, hey, look, this isn't for us. Right?
Or maybe there are pieces of it that we can work on independently from actually having the designation.
Right.
So we would just do it to whatever extent you're interested. Also important, just so you're totally aware, a planning area community can pull out of plan conformance at any time. If anything looks like it's going wrong, we're going to do our best to make it right. But you can at any time decide to pull the plug and just say this is it. We're not.
And we don't ask for.
We're out of the planning group.
Right.
You can decide not to rescind your plan conformance.
Right. We don't want to do this anymore.
We don't
ask you for the money back.
Yeah. In order
Okay.
to do it officially, you have to do it by adoption of an ordinance.
Right.
So what we.
Opting in, so to speak.
Right. What we
as they call
typically do is set you up, you adopt a resolution of intent, which is just enough for us to set up your pool of funding to put together all the work you would need that would constitute a petition to the council. And the idea behind doing that is to have all the pieces in place so you can carefully examine them and understand just exactly what it's gonna mean for everything in your community.
Would there be a requirement of amending the master plan?
There most likely would, but the way
We're
we do.
about 5 years into the current.
Well,
amendment.
mainly it
Okay.
would be, and we would look for how close it already is, but mainly it would be to indicate that you are planning to, that you are conforming for the Highlands and going along with, you know, what we decide would be your package of plan conformance material. So ultimately, there most likely would be an amendment to that we would of course pay for.
Right.
But
And-
the idea is that you would prepare most of that ahead of time, before you ever say yes. It's our dollar, we provide it, you figure it out, you understand exactly in writing, black and white, what it means, what it looks like, and how it fits or doesn't fit.
And you'd most likely be adding a Highlands element to your current master plan, basically talking about the things that the regional master plan talks about and how you've addressed them in all the other elements of your current master plan. And you know, if you just want to look at it, you know, right now we're actively working with Chester Borough, which is, you know, maybe not a totally analogous municipality, but it's not so dissimilar, right? It's a center within, you know, within the rural environment, and they've got their issues being a center, right? They've got their sewer and water issues, they've got traffic issues, right? We're helping them right now work through some very difficult issues with their upgrading their sewer plant that's been a real impediment to them going forward, and we've been able to get over an obstacle that I wasn't quite frankly sure. Well, I had confidence we were going to do it, but it's amazing that we did. So you know, we work with all kinds of different, right? And you know that Chester Township is a fully conforming municipality, very different, right? It's a 30 square mile rural community, and we work same thing all across the region, towns of all types. And again, it's tailored to what type of town you are and where you see yourself going forward.
One other added note, just so you're aware, is we try to set our documents up so that they reside side by side with your own, so that you would have supplements that basically would fill in any gaps that you aren't already addressing in your ordinances. So we try very hard, we just basically say this is a supplement to the existing zoning or the existing master plan to incorporate X, Y, Z. And before we resolve conflict areas and deal with them, of course, you know, as part of that.
And implementation still resides at the local level too. I mean, that's the other thing. The entire responsibility. Right? There are things that they do a call-up audit ordinance. Like they could call one up for us to review. And basically, you still control your future. Once your zoning officer gets certified by us, you can issue your own exemptions. Right? You really take care of, as long as everything is consistent with the regional master plan. You've got the ability to do an awful lot on your own that you don't need us for.
Sarah in school.
Yeah.
Good luck
I have
with
two
luck with that.
semi-specific questions.
Sure.
PG's ERI is up this year.
Yep.
And so we are planning to work with New Jersey Conservation, or Land Conservancy of New Jersey, excuse me. And so is that something that would be financially supported by Highlands, or does Highlands actually
You write us a
do
check.
Two things about that. Yes, we would write you could hire Land Conservancy of New Jersey to do your update your ERI for you. And we would, as Judy would review the scope of work and do it. The thing I will tell you though is that we just came out with a product this year called the Interactive ERI.
Right, I saw that
Where
online.
you can write your own ERI essentially right off of, right, it may take a little bit of tweaking, but it's gonna reduce the cost of updating your ERI from say $10,000 down to probably $5 or even less. Because the Interactive ERI not only already has all of the major environmental resources mapped, it's got interactive text in it so that you can actually print out the bare bones of a full document using that product.
Right, I looked at that briefly, and I just don't know if we would have someone that would be able or have that time to do it.
Sure.
That's the
I think
issue.
we'd have
'Cause
to pay the engineer or
Right,
the
we'd have-
planner.
Do you have somebody who's familiar with that tool that you've developed?
We do,
that we can
we've done,
hire?
yes, we've done training on it. I think I think the folks from the Land Conservancy went through the training as well, so they know how to use it.
And if they weren't able, we could pay for a professional to do it. We're getting a number of applications like this right now, where the proposal is to develop a new ERI. They're incorporating our interactive ERI information, but it's not necessarily solely gonna be consisting of that.
Right.
And then they're adding, and there's a bill for their services as well. So you can,
Alright,
way to
well, I
get
can
the
speak
job
with the
done.
people there and see if they can use the tool and cut the cost a
They,
little bit.
they should be able to. It's pretty intuitive.
Yeah.
The other thing is that it's really it really is a pretty remarkable tool because it's got a lot of live information on it. So the climate data, for instance, is kept up to date on a monthly basis. Right? Land use, land cover is kept up to date on a biannual basis. So if you were to do the old way, if you did an ERI, you say you did an ERI in 2013, and now 10 years have gone by and you want to do it again, the ERI that you did in 2013 was static in 2013. When you use this tool, the ERI that you produce is up to date as of the latest update of that underlying information. And we grab it from USDA, from the National Weather Service, from DEP, from DOT. So all the information that's in that ERI is as current as it's kept by the sources of that data.
Our staff is available to help as well. If,
Okay.
If you have
Great.
someone in-house that you wanna work with, that's fine, we can do that training and help.
Okay, great. We can speak about it more later. And then my other question is, we have a kind of an antiquated, not well-established trail system in our town, of which we've talked about for years to, elaborate on and connect and all of our dreams. And is that something that, it sounds as though you could financially support that, but do you have someone at the Highlands that can physically do that? Like, we wanna hire a consultant to help us because we're kind of stagnant, right? We don't have that person here.
We need a comprehensive trails plan, and
Right.
we need a way to get it done.
Right.
It's funny you should ask. I think it's on the next slide. I'm not sure.
We can try that, there you go.
But so these are some of the projects that we funded in the past, and we've done a number of trails and recreation plans.
Funding or actual planning?
Funding. We don't we don't have the resources to actually do the planning documents ourselves. We will technically advise the professionals who are doing it, and there are plenty of qualified people out there who can do it. And again, we would pay for it. I mean, look, before I actually Judy funded me doing some of this work.
That's right. That's
before
right.
I came to the Highlands. Yeah,
We heard about some firm up in southern New York State
Yeah.
that's very good at doing a trails
And
implementation. You have those, those
we do.
people?
We
and
do,
you could
and we
refer
could
us.
hook you up with people who are good, and right, and that's exactly the kind of things that we want to see municipalities doing, right? You want to be able to connect your downtown to your parks. You want to connect the train station to your schools, right? You look at all these things where you can, right? We live in a world sometimes where we all live in our neighborhoods, and it's a great way of being able to break down the barriers between neighborhoods. Great way to give alternate means of mobility. If you want to do a multi-use trail system where it was hiking, biking, jogging, and for all the other sources, right? We would help you plan that out. And then what we really want to be able to do then is introduce you to the sources of funding so you can actually do them, right? I mean, that's what good is having a plan on the shelf if it never gets brought to reality.
We have a number of municipalities working on trails right now.
Okay, great.
And some of them are really interesting. They're trying to provide linkages to their little downtowns, to public places like the schools, libraries, et cetera, recreation, historic sites, what have you. But it's really popular right now.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of
As it
people
should be.
doing it. A lot of planners
Yeah.
are putting together the proposals. And
Right.
that's all we would need. It would be maybe a planner, and you may need another expert on this as well. You'd need your trails experts. But you can bring multiple people to the table.
Yeah.
We just need a proposal, which would be it would indicate what the project is, what the tasks are, what your proposed deliverables would be, timeline, and a budget.
Right. Next week we're rewarding Montville a grant for just that, to build the trail that's going to connect their main recreational park with their train station.
Okay.
So you can, you know, a lot of these don't apply to you, right? You don't have a, well, no, you don't, yeah, you might have, there's no lake management planning zone here, is there?
I don't,
No.
Okay, I didn't think so.
you took care of the park.
Is
Not
they
really
took
a
care of the
lake
park.
either.
But, you know, look, stream corridor protection and restoration, you know, we wanna help you, you know, look at the issues that are coming up with flooding from extreme precipitation events. I'm sure you've experienced a couple of events here, over the last 2 years, you know, being downhill from where I live. I know how hard it rained where I was, and I ended up here. But you know, to be able to help you plan for resiliency, to look at these issues as you go forward, you know, and again, the full range of things that you're going to end up working on, you know, we're there for you, and again, we're there to help you pay for that. Right? We want to see you do good planning. That's our mission. You know, going back to what Judy was saying before about some of the centers being designated for growth, our mission for the Highlands is to limit growth in the region as a whole, not just to move pieces around the table, right? I don't, the thing that bothers me, I don't know what the sustainable population of the Highlands is. What is the number of people that the Highlands can accommodate and still provide the people who live here with the water and the other resources they need and still export those resources across the state? I don't know what that number is. Right? And we have to get a hold of that. And I know that number is not going to be, that number is probably not too far off of where we are now. So certainly the last thing we want to do is encourage population growth within the region. Although we're not going to be stagnant. I mean, you know, and again, you know, you look, there's still places like Dover and Wharton and Morristown and Phillipsburg, and there are towns that probably can accommodate some modest amount of growth, and they should. Right, those are the real economic drivers of the region. But what we really want to be able to do is right. Do you want people to come out here and visit your town on the weekend? Right? Do you want them to use your town as a hub where they would visit a farm, go kayaking, go play golf, whatever it is that will bring people out to spend money here in a sustainable manner, right? That's consistent with the character of your town and consistent with protection of the resources and takes advantage of those resources as being the driver for that economic growth, right? People want to, why would you want to come here? I want to come here because it's a beautiful little town. What a terrific place to spend a Saturday, right? And they're not coming out here to see a warehouse. They're not coming out here to see a housing development. They come out here to see the hunt. I know it's a neighboring town, but but they're going to be here.
Races.
Races. Yes, the races.
When you move to this town, there's one thing you're taught. You don't call it the hunt, you call it the races.
So, but that, you know, that's probably the real nature, you know, unless you were to identify something that we're totally missing, that's probably the real nature of the economic growth that we would foresee for your community.
Okay.
Right? And it just fits. It's common. A lot of this is common sense. So, which government is capable of, believe it or not. Want to go over some of the
Sure.
hits?
Here's some great examples. There's an open space and trails plan right there, Parsippany, Troy Hills for $94,000. You can read down that list. Municipal Center and Trail Feasibility Center for Vernon, $38,000. These numbers just vary all over depending on what your project is and the extent of it and your actual extent of need. We do have to review for reasonable expenses, but these numbers can be very large. Circulation plan for Phillipsburg, $50,000. They were dealing with warehousing pressures and issues. Economic development plan for Hunterdon County, $75,000. And that's an exciting plan. They're doing some great things in Hunterdon. Go on their website and look for the various tourism opportunities and trails. They're building a really nice package of
Their beer trail, and if you get the passport stamped, I think you get a sweatshirt.
And then stream bank stabilization for the Musconnet area, $89,000 for Roxbury Township. So those are just examples. Some are resource management plans and resource based. Some are tourism and economic development based or sustainable economic development planning. Trails planning, as we said, historic preservation, stream corridor restoration planning, street tree planning,
Yep.
your downtown, just everything that a municipality does is basically going to be eligible for our funding. The regional master plan is very long. It's about 400 some pages long. You're not required to read it, but it covers just about everything you can think of, and everything that this municipality is doing is probably already in there, which would make it eligible for our grant funding. So if you're doing stormwater management planning, updating the master plan, working on your housing plan, it covers the gamut.
Okay, I'll move on to your last slide. Oh, second to last slide.
Next to the last slide. So the first thing that we would recommend that you do, if you were interested, that you ask for an self-assessment grant, where we would pay your professionals to take a look at your current zoning, the status of where you're at, compared to the regional master plan, and identify any places where the actions are needed, where those conflicts may or may not exist, where they can identify the first steps that you want to take. And again, on our dime, you're professional, not ours. And based upon what that initial assessment were to reveal, you make your decision as to whether or not you want to proceed or not. And if it looks good, then fine, we're with you. Right? If not, it was nice to be here. And thank you for being so polite. Right? But that's really what it is. There's no obligation once you start to working with us, and it's a long-term conversation that we have with you. Right? It's like I said, this is a relationship that we build with the municipalities over time to help you do the best that you can. So that should take us to the last slide. Well, be happy to answer any questions that you have. In
Okay.
addition.
Do we have questions for Ben?
I just have one last question.
Sure.
I'm the liaison to the land use board. I definitely want, they get input from the land use board.
Sure.
Because, I mean, they do our planning, obviously. It seems to me that the appropriate time to bring them in would be after the assessment is done, when there's meat on the bone, so to
Yes.
speak, for them to review.
Absolutely. Then you have something to compare it to. I mean, otherwise you're going to send them to read the regional master plan.
Otherwise, I'd be bringing you in to meet with them, to go around and
I
around
could,
again.
and you know, I actually could. I would, you know, we would be. I'll speak for myself. I'd be happy to come back and talk to them.
Both ways.
Right, Judy be there. But I'd be happy to come if you needed us to. We would be there for you. But that's you've got it right.
Logically, it seems to make that
It
seems
does.
to be the most sensible.
That's the most sensible, because then you have something to compare it with,
Yeah.
so you could say, look, what are we talking about? And what does a typical initial assessment take, Judy?
15,000 is a kind of an average typical grant provided for conducting the initial assessment.
And how long would they generally take?
You know, they can take any, we're on one right now that.
It depends on the professionals.
It really depends on the professionals and the municipality and how quickly they wanna move on
And you're
it.
saying that's done by our planner?
It could be your planner, or you could bring in a consultant planner to do it, it doesn't matter to us. There are loads of planners who are experienced in the
It's
Highlands.
whoever you feel really, it's about making you feel comfortable, that it's not us telling you what to do. I mean, it's,
You want an objective evaluation. NetCong has actually, they're just finishing one up. It's not, there are some posted on our website if you wanna go take a look and see what they look like. But it's really intended as a pretty broad brush look to do that first guesstimate or scan for the conflicts. It's to say, here's what we have, here's the outline of what Highlands would ask for, here's what it could look like, and here's where we see conflicts. And that's
I think
the
you need to
most.
move off the word conflicts and say
Yeah.
where you can improve.
yes, that's a much better way of putting it, yes.
Well, and
Conflicts just makes
don't wanna be
makes me
presumptuous
nervous.
though,
Yeah.
municipalities do good planning too. So it's just where things are not 100% aligned, that's what it is, and it's to be able to pull those out, understand what they are and how we could work through them, you know, what it would look like in the end, that's what it's for. NetCong actually just finished theirs, and end of the day, the planner said she was hunting for areas that might be a problem, and she had a hard time finding anything, because they are, you know, there'd probably be a full Highland Center if they come in and go forward with
It's
us.
another town's been a center for 200 years.
Yeah.
We're not reinventing the wheel here.
Okay, anybody else? I have a few questions
Sure.
for you. So, just to recap, what you're suggesting is that the borough do a no obligation, so to speak, planning assessment,
Correct.
okay? You come to the council, you say, the analysis says, council, these are your differences with Highlands master plan. In order to become, or I should say, opt in to Highlands, which means being able to take advantages of what Highlands has to offer, which you enumerated tonight, you would have to make these changes.
Not necessarily. I mean, we would identify action items for you to take. We
Okay.
would fund them. You can take advantage of doing that work right then and there. You don't have to reach the end of any kind of, check off a box before you get to take advantage of our resources, right? I mean,
Okay.
you take it right
So
from there.
it starts right from day one.
Starts right from day one.
Council then has, or borough, then has the ability to avail itself of the resources and the funding and grant opportunities that Highlands offers.
That's correct.
You can opt out at any time.
That's
You
correct.
You did say that, okay? That's a recap of really what you're offering to us.
That's correct.
Who around us, what towns around us have opted in?
Chester Borough just
Right.
opted in. They're right there. They're completely planning area, right? Because they were going to be a center as well. That's why they were excluded from the preservation area. They've opted in, and they've been working with us for about 2 years now. And they're-
Bedminster's in for its preservation area
Right.
only. They didn't choose.
Which is what, Pluckman?
It's the north, yeah,
Yeah.
Pluckham is really the northern.
So they're just doing a portion of
Part,
the town.
yeah.
They're doing a portion, but they're
Okay.
they're working with the state planning commission on plan endorsement for the remainder of their town.
Yeah. And we
Which-
work closely
yeah.
with them. So
Okay.
that was one thing, I
So
don't
you-
know, I don't know if it was clear that if you get plan conformance through the Highlands Council, you automatically have plan endorsement as well
Right.
through state planning
So
commission.
you get that. You get
So you're
the-
entitled
and the
to all of those.
And the
benefits.
statutes are full of little Easter eggs where there are benefits where you qualify for things, for incentive programs, for grants that are tied to that designation that are out there. They're everywhere.
So right now, the two of you as a team are really trying to get many towns that are within the Highlands region to opt in for the benefit of what we'll call all of New Jersey,
That's correct.
because our water resources essentially
Yes,
originate in the Highlands region.
that's exactly it.
Okay. Earlier in the presentation, I'm gonna go back to a slide because I have control of it.
Yep.
Look at that. Okay, you showed a map right here and you said this was Highlands, but no. Is this not just a portion of Highlands?
No, that's the entire region. So you can see, it goes down from. It goes all the way
Why
down.
is only part of it highlighted? In other words, why isn't Somerset County have
Be-
colors on it,
because
or Morris?
because the only
It may not be the whole.
I don't think
yeah
this is the
wait
right
oh
map.
yeah that's not that's
It's not the right
what-
map.
That's the wrong map.
Okay, I thought so.
That's the wrong map.
Because up here is where the really
Yeah.
big
Right.
stuff is.
It's the
Right.
first,
Right.
first
And
image.
here's the
Yeah.
Okay,
okay.
I-
So
Thank you
just
for
wanted to
pointing
ask.
that out.
that's it. I knew it's funny when you were saying that. I knew that didn't look quite right.
Yeah, I was,
okay.
Because we kind of feel like we got cut
Um,
off now.
I happen to agree with my colleague John that getting the land use board's buy-in after this analysis is done, is the right path. However, misinformation in a borough, as you know, can be very dangerous. And before we execute doing that, I think it might be a good idea, if you all think, I wouldn't mind asking you to come back and give this exact same presentation to the land use board, because I would want them to know that we're talking to you.
Sure.
Okay, if it comes back to us, the council's going forward with Highlands, and I don't want any negative blood. Would you be open to doing that?
Absolutely, and that's actually good policy. Right? I
Yeah,
mean, right,
just
the
come
whole
back and do the same sales pitch.
Yeah,
So speak to them.
right. The whole this
Right.
is really this really should be a community-driven process.
Now, ultimately, the decision to proceed is a council's decision,
Correct.
and we respect that, but we also respect the sovereignty of our land use.
Sure.
Okay?
and they would be very much affected by the whole process, so I think it is real important to pull them in as early as we
I
possibly
can tell you 100%, because I was around when the Highlands started, and the debate going back and forth between preservation and planning, and town, whether you're gonna retain your autonomy over your zoning or not. And we have a very proactive land use board, and they definitely would wanna be in charge of our zoning. They wouldn't wanna hear that we were pulling the rug out from under them.
Usurping them.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
glad you asked that question, because we need to answer that. The way this works is, in the end of the day, you would have your ordinances and be totally in charge of your ordinances. We don't wanna be doing land use board
Yeah.
reviews, that we don't have time or staff to be
We
handling
don't.
that sort of thing.
Right. Understand, we're not a regulatory body either. We implement the Highlands Act, which has regulatory features in it, but the actual regulation doesn't come from us. The regulatory authority really lies with DEP and other rulemaking bodies that we are not. So, you know, we really, we're a planning agency, we're a technical support agency. You know, we're very, I believe, a very strong policy agency in the long run, because it's important for the future of the state. But we don't take control of your town.
Okay. Ben, I'm gonna write you an email with the contact information, and I'll copy him on it.
Sure.
Our land use board chair's name is Greg Ganacone.
Okay.
Okay, in fact, his office is in Chester. You may
Might
know
know
him.
him.
You might know him, okay? And I'm gonna ask you to reach out to him and set that up
Certainly.
at the recommendation of the council.
I'd be happy to. They're gonna end up reviewing any ordinance changes, any master
Of course.
plan changes, gonna go through them anyway.
Of course,
I mean, it's gonna have their input, so it's silly not to involve them.
of course. But I think what's most important is selling them on the idea that it's
Sure.
not usurping them, it's assisting them.
That's correct.
All right, council, how would you like to proceed? Would you like all to digest this and we discuss it at a future meeting? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, why don't you have any documents related to the planning area assessment for us?
We have some things we're gonna leave with you, and I can provide you more online.
All right.
I can send you more.
All right, Susie, would you make a note to put, Highlands planning area assessment on the agenda for the, second meeting in May? Please.
There are a bunch of interesting items here. There should be plenty for one each. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then when you're ready, all you have to do is really contact Judy, and she'll hold your hand through the
Yeah, I can
process.
provide you information on the initial assessment, on the grant,
We'll
on
see
the.
you again from the land use board meeting.
Sure.
And I just to clarify too, the initial assessment is a pretty broad brush look. It's only a $15,000 grant, it's not gonna dive deep. But that next step would allow us to set up a significant amount of money to go forward to do the studies and prepare all the materials that would go into your actual petition. So you're not committed whatsoever to coming in. It would be once the petition is prepared, then you would decide whether or not to actually submit it. So it could be a year.
And
It could
you're
be-
willing to fund that endeavor?
Yes.
Very good. I thank you both very much for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Ben, nice to meet you
Thank
again.
you.
Thank you.
Judy, nice to meet you. We thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm gonna also give you a couple business cards so you can. Thank you.
Thank you.
For having us.
Thank
Of
you.
course.
Thank you.
What was that?
Thank you for saying that.
Oh, you're welcome. I appreciate you saying that. I thought it was right. Okay. Moving on. Yes, please.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay, two. I thought that was productive, everyone. How about you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
I found it interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really informative.
Maybe it can help us kickstart some of our initiatives.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard for us to get grants as our community sometimes. We don't have the economic parts.
Right.
Sometimes, so it's just encouraging.
We don't have the bandwidth to apply for all the grants. If we
Right.
could get some help on that, it would be great. And we're gonna need grants more and more going forward.
Yeah.
I was thinking as they were, early in their presentation, why it didn't occur to a lot of people to say, let's get them involved on our side in our affordable housing litigation.
Right. I was gonna ask, what kind of relationship does Highlands have with, like, fair share housing?
It seems like they didn't have
No,
any
relationship.
interaction, but it sounds like they're state agencies.
Right.
Yeah.
It's crazy that fair
Which
share
one-
doesn't have to
which
take
one
their
wins
input.
in court?
Well, Fair Share is really not a state agency,
No, they're not.
They're
They've
nonprofit.
been invited in by the
Yeah.
state in
Right.
litigation, so who wins in that battle between fair share and Highlands?
Ben Spinelli said something that was very interesting to me, having chaired Affordable for so many years. And that he said, we are doing our own study right now to see how much absorption, and he didn't use that word, the towns can take in the round 4 affordable housing. They could be a big ally to us when round 4
Yeah.
comes
Yeah,
about.
that's exactly right.
and to establish that the relationship now could have great benefits for Peapack and Gladstone.
That was the purpose of my question. is
Yep.
see-
No, and the fact that they're ahead of it and they're doing that work now, which is a huge job. It's equivalent to the Kinsey report and ER. What was the other company? ERI, whatever. eConsult. The two studies that were done were huge projects, and the fact that they're doing it for this region, I think, could have a good benefit for us. Okay, moving on. Old business. Does anybody have any old business?
Mayor, you might recall we postponed the discussion on go-to-meeting till the.
And we're gonna postpone it until Nancy's back.
Okay.
Okay.
Just one item, I don't know if it's the right section for old business, but on the mayor's punch list, on, one of the sections that you have for road sign updates, I actually am at a point where I think I can bring it on the next, meeting to do a presentation to some options and pricing to what I found.
Maybe they can get us some grant money.
Yeah,
Maybe they could, that was one of the things I jotted down.
Yeah.
definitely.
Why don't you do it at the next meeting under new business?
Sure.
Okay.
Suzie, can you help put that on the agenda for next? Thank you. Just on the old business, has there been perhaps?
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I have a comment.
Oh.
We have one mayor's punch list item, looking for more to come forward soon.
No comment.
Hint, hint, hint. Go ahead.
On the item I brought up last session, regarding the illumination of the Holland Road or Holland Ave, flag, has that been any progress on that, do we know?
I'm sorry,
On the getting a light on the flag, you remember how,
Correct.
cause it's staying up at night and it needs a light if it's gonna stay up at
who
night?
was going to look into that property?
Yeah, did we,
Yeah, we're looking into lighting for that.
so there
Okay.
hasn't been a light that was just out, it just,
Yeah, I guess we never noticed.
okay. And is there electricity over there? Where,
No,
like,
not right there.
They have some good solar
They have solar lights that are
Yeah.
available.
Yeah,
Okay. Remember, that flag did have a purpose. It was because there was a yard there. There's no yard there anymore. If that flag came down, I don't think it would be the end of the world. That's always an option. But let's see what solar options are.
yeah, it's tough, I just don't know if a solar option would light,
Yeah, I
hit
don't-
the flag that high, they're not that strong.
I know.
Right.
Okay. New business. Anybody have new business items?
I have one item. There is going to be, and it was in the PG Notify today, the Friends of the Library wanted me to let everyone know they're doing an open house. I'm going to read this. Tuesday, April 25th from 3 to 5 p.m. It's in honor of National Library Workers' Day. It's an open house for past and present members of the PG Library staff, Library Advisory Board, volunteers, and friends of the library. It's a chance for everyone to come together, and they'll have light refreshments and a door prize drawing, and it is sponsored by the Friends of the Library. So I think this is really encouraging because of the library work we have underway, or we're starting. It really is taking a combined effort between all these different groups that I'm learning for the first time have really been so involved in the library, from the county to the Friends, obviously the Friends with their fundraising efforts, and then the Library Advisory Board. They're finding their way and purpose within the library, and they always have had it, but I think it's important for the groups to work together and understand what each group is doing. So this open house will be a great event for them, but if you have a chance, stop into the library, thank a librarian for what they're doing. And then we'll have an update on the library progress next meeting. I understand the Friends is still finalizing some of their fundraising, and so we'll bring that update. I do also understand the fine money that has been gathered through the library is going toward the renovation work. It's about $10,000, so that's a good amount that's going to contribute to the overall cost of the library renovation. So I guess that's a combination of old and new business, but just an update on the library.
Very good, thank you, Minnie.
Yeah.
Anything else under new business? Hearing.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
one other library item. A free library is going to be purchased by the Friends, and they're working with DPW to get that shipped so that it can be put up at the park, at Liberty Park. I think it's over by the recreation area,
they
the
want,
it's
they
by
want
the
to put
top
by top art.
Totland,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's going to go up. I don't know when it'll be delivered, but that's something that'll be added to the park.
And that's the little free library, which is like the little mailbox where you,
Right.
you take a book, leave a book.
Right,
Right.
right. So that's also sponsored by the Friends.
Okay, thank you
Okay,
for that
you're welcome.
update. Anybody else on new business items? Okay, under miscellaneous discussions and approvals, we have an ordinance, not for being a vote, but for
Not for
discussion. Not for thank you, not for introduction, but for discussion. And you also, the cover letter that came from the actually it came from the EC through the Land Use Board with a proposed ordinance regarding, land disturbance and grading on lots. So the discussion I'm gonna look to have right now, is this an ordinance that the council believes we should proceed with?
Okay, if I could just jump in here, this is an ordinance that has been circulated and reviewed on several occasions by the Land Use Board. And the genesis of it, I don't want to be specific, it's overly specific at least. The genesis of it was there was a project on 206 where there was an incredible amount of soil that was moved, and our Land Use Board did not have a basis to really push back on how much was being removed. Hence this statute, so that in future cases we are able to deal with large amounts of soil being removed for a project.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those ordinances I feel like the town should have had a long time ago.
We should have had it before this other project.
Right, and every time a project comes along and, you know, it's denuded of trees and the sloping is destroyed, we have no ability to stop it. And so, several people from EC and the town planner and several people have been involved in this creation. I know the members of EC took kind of these ordinance from several local towns and tweaked it for our town. We had several meetings about some details of it. I don't know, Isabel, if you want to speak to it, if you briefly want to kind of give a little summary of.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, Isabel was a big contributor to it. Is that okay?
Sure.
A couple minutes? Thanks.
Do I need to do this, or can I just?
Yeah, no, do that.
So I'm Isabel Corbin, and so starting, years and years, about a decade ago, this has been talked about, but officially, 2 years ago, we all decided that this really needed to be a priority. And Greg from the Land Use Board has been really helpful. I mean, he's done, in terms of the legwork, he's probably done 90% of this. He's in that industry, as you all know. We've tried to make it really as simple as possible. Originally we had that whole folder, the amount of drafts we have gone through. But basically, two things that would be beneficial. One is right now, the town has to pay for what's the exact wording, John? The review. And right now, this ordinance would have the person wants to make the changes pay for it, which would be nice. And that was something that people didn't realize was happening, including us. And then the other thing is obviously just with storm water management and everything that I already mentioned tonight, this would really help with that environmental impact. It's not gonna, if someone needs to do a septic, a pool, it's not, I think, and did a template from that. So it's sort of a very rough.
Right, so it's not overly restrictive, but it gives
No.
the town
We would
some
obviously
teeth.
love more, but we also know we want it to pass and make our town, just so the Land Use Board has something
To work with, basically.
Yeah.
So just the concern I had, I think the area of disturbance, if I'm having trouble bringing it up, was 1,000 square feet, if I remember correctly, which is 20 by 50.
Mhm.
So if I wanted, for example, to clear an area of scrub behind my house,
Mhm.
I think I have to have an engineer sign off on it, submit the plans. So I'm looking at $5,000 to build a garden in my backyard.
Well, no,
I
that
thought
would,
it said,
yeah.
I just saw it here, it said 5,000 square feet.
Oh, is it 5,000
Yeah.
square feet?
500
Yeah.
or 5,000?
I think it's 5,000.
a patio's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. It was,
No, we
I felt
literally
like it
went
was
through
pretty
like,
generous.
what have
5,000
we
square foot
all
patio would
done?
be pretty big.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I wanna come to your house.
No,
but-
that's fine.
Yeah.
My concern, and you had the nice carve outs for the pool.
Yeah. Yeah, we basically went through everything that we had all done, and the committee was, or wasn't, I don't think official committee or whatever we were supposed to do. Some Land Use Board, some of us, and then, Jamie was on it at the end.
Actually, let's be clear on our facts here. Let me read this to you.
Yeah.
It says, create an increase in new proposed impervious surfaces in excess of 500 square feet. So if you wanna put a patio in a 520 square feet, you would have to go through this process.
Doesn't that say 5,000 square feet?
500.
500, okay.
Now, 5,000 is also land disturbance
Yeah.
in excess of 5,000. But if you wanted to increase impervious, as an example, such as an addition
Driveway.
to your house, a driveway, whatever. Let me give you my 2 cents on this. I do believe there's a place for a land disturbance component to our ordinances. I am not comfortable with this ordinance as the way it reads. I think it's way too restrictive and way too onerous on residents. If you wanted to put in a patio of 500 square feet, you have to go and pay a fee, hire an engineer, and have a plan done by what this ordinance says. If you have a forest behind your house, and we all have wood, no, we don't all have woods, but a lot of us have woods, and you wanna remove 10 or more trees, you can't do it. So that means any farm in our town who wants to clear a little bit of farmland or some old trees can't do it. I am
There's
open.
exceptions for dead trees,
I know that, okay?
but really that's the point, right? That they shouldn't be able to go behind their land and remove a bunch of trees. Like that's the whole point of it.
Well, who are we to say that somebody can't remove their trees?
Or it's just saying you'd have to have a professional look at it, and would this have negative environmental repercussions by removing X amount of trees? And I think there's 2 review, and I wasn't that involved, so.
Let me just finish one comment.
Okay.
My impression upon reading this and studying this is, while I believe there's a place for a land disturbance component to our existing ordinances, I believe this ordinance, the way it's written, and the requirements that items that it requires be done are absolutely oppressive to residents looking to do reasonable improvements on their properties. And I think it needs a little bit of rework.
So again, Isabel, you might have to, because I don't have it up in front of me, but there was the 2 levels, right? We kind of simplified the levels. There was like the basic,
Major
cheap
and
one,
minor.
major and minor.
Yep.
And so, to remind me what the minor is?
Well, it's actually all ended up being put on one.
Oh, it did.
Yeah. I mean, if you can't.
Looking for the 500, 5,000,
Yeah.
go up to 1.
Yeah, major is defined in the definitions as anything more than 10,000 square feet of new impervious, and minor is, more than 500. And we want it disturbed more than 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
I would be uncomfortable putting this ordinance in front of us the way it's written.
You know what I'm just reading now is it says unlawful for any person to blah, 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 access, clear the land. It implies that if you're clearing less than 5,000 square feet, that you're not subject to this ordinance, but I think we need to
I think
actually
you-
state that
I
explicitly.
think you are. If you are clearing less than 5,000, you are required to comply with this ordinance.
See, I don't read it that way.
Yeah.
You have to do more than 5,000, but to me, it's implied that there should be an express statement that if you're clearing less than 5,000 square feet, that it's, that you're not subject to the permitting, et cetera.
Yeah, it's defining minor development as either creating more than 500 square feet of new impervious area or disturbing more than 5,000 square feet. So there's the distinction between creating impervious area, that's 500, or disturbing more than 5,000 square feet.
But the way I read A though, my lot's is completely cleared. If I'm not clearing anything, I can put a 500 or plus patio in, impervious.
Not without complying with this.
But I'm not, I'm not disturbing the land.
No, but if your patio is more than 500 square, you are creating an increase, so therefore it's unlawful.
I don't think that's written well. I think there should be an and in there.
Maybe. John Bruder, what experience do you have with with an ordinance like this?
Well, nothing directly like this. Other ordinances that touch upon it. It's
So right now, if you wanna build a 500 square foot patio, you have to get, Oh.
501.
501.
right, so right now, if you, I wanna build a 501 square foot patio, what do I have to do? Does anyone know?
Right now, if you wanted to build a 501 square foot patio, well, you'd have to get a permit, and the permit gets run by zoning. And if zoning sees that the coverage ratio is okay, then they pass it on to building, and building issues a permit.
And so all this adds is,
What this adds is that checklist at the beginning of this ordinance that requires you to go through all these steps here. All of these steps that are required before you even get to the permits process. That's the way I read it.
Yeah, that's the way I interpret it too. So Jamie, the engineer's cost would be more than the patio.
Who is completing the steps? Is the engineer signing off on the steps, or is the resident going through?
The resident has to go through.
check?
The resident goes, but the engineer has to deem the application complete
Got it.
by saying you've gone through the steps.
Okay.
I think it's a good start. I think you're almost there. So just, on the minor issues on the impervious.
Yeah, I mean, Greg has worked with.
right, I know, that's the
Great
thing, I
number.
mean,
This
that was
is-
the numbers he came up with.
This is a, well,
We have another option. If we're close, would the council like to call Roger Thomas in and have him opine on this? And give us his thoughts of how it could be improved?
Actually, I'm thinking more along the lines of Bill Ryan, because this is
He's
very
been
much.
involved.
He was all part of this, he's been on the
approved
meeting.
it.
But this is very much an engineering ordinance.
Right, and he was the one who
Not
came
like-
up with,
He gave us a lot of the
Yeah.
numbers.
so it was really him and Greg who did this, so.
Okay, well, I think just by the council glancing at it for 10 minutes, or in discussing it for 10 minutes, we found a few holes at least that need to be repaired. Plus, there's the consideration, as Councilman Lemma mentioned, of putting an undue burden on our residents for a 500-foot patio, 501-foot patio.
Has there been any discussion of not using numbers like 500 or 5,000, instead using percentages based on the lot size? Because if you have a large property, 10 trees is nothing, or 5,000 square feet is small on a large property, but on a small property it.
Yeah, Greg just lifted this from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It's-
Amy,
it's a
Amy, to
really
your point,
common-
that's how the impervious coverage ordinances do read.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's based on percentages of your lot size,
Okay.
so that's not far-fetched at all.
Got it.
And I guess I do have an issue with $2,000 fee on top of all of this for a major grading plan. So maybe I have an issue with that as well.
But right now, the town is paying.
I'm sorry,
for-
may I just ask
Yeah.
the examination fees are charged to the escrow account of the applicant, so I'm not quite sure the town's paying for that.
Yeah, no.
All right, well, how does the council wish to proceed?
I would actually want Bill Ryan to come in, because he knows the town, and he'd be able to give you examples of where, throughout town.
Right, so maybe he should review this with us, cause he did come up with this with Greg, and maybe he can describe why he came up with these numbers and,
I'm good with that, but I think I'd like to also have Roger Thomas be part of that too,
I'll come
for a
this.
legal viewpoint.
One thing I noticed also is that the front page says the land use board is suggesting a 2,000 for major grading plan, and I don't know how that tracks with paragraph 17, because I saw that had about $1,000 non-refundable fee and an escrow with an initial deposit of 1,000, so I wasn't clear if that was the same 1,000 or if they were saying 1,000 plus 1,000.
Good point.
Right.
Okay, now you bring Roger to answer that question.
I think,
Roger's not a math guy, but.
right, I think it was 2,000, so 1,000 goes into escrow, 1,000 is the non-refundable fee. And then if anything that goes above and beyond the initial 1,000 would be taken out of that escrow, everything else would be
That makes-
refunded. Is that correct?
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's one and one.
Probably
Yeah, so it's $2,000 of which you have the potential of getting 1,000 back.
What you just said, I think is
Clear?
Yeah, I think.
Well, I'm, this is just
Yeah.
lawyer stuff.
So-
I mean, it's not
Yeah,
that
see,
hard.
we've got an exemption for swimming pool, there should be one for the patios if you're not
So,
disturbing
so in
5,000.
terms of unintended consequences, there's a person that we all know that was putting the pool in, and he wanted to put the pool over on the right side of the property, but if it was there, it involved a special review and surveys, and it was, the cost for him to apply for the pool permit was $12,000, because of the surveys he needed to have done. So he put it where he didn't want it, because he couldn't afford he thought the 12,000 would have been wasted. So it's our job to make sure that that doesn't happen with this unintended consequence in the future. So it's worth the discussion. We'll get to the right place.
I'll tell you what's on my mind. There's a resident up there's a resident up from where I live who they put an addition on their house. They had to regrade around the addition to make the land look right, and it looked like the grading contractor who was Conover did a fine job doing it, okay? But I'm wondering, it was clearly 5,000 feet worth of grading. Is that resident now gonna be looking at $5,000 in additional soft costs to build an addition on their house that they didn't have before? And that troubles me,
Oh, because they did the grading.
because they did the grading. And if they didn't do the grading, it would've looked horrible.
And it would have flooded in the house.
Yeah.
I think
So
it's
I
helpful.
wonder about conflicts like that.
It's helpful
Well,
to have these scenarios.
Yeah, and I think discussing the financial part of it, but I guess I do think we need to focus on the reason for these. So you talk about someone putting an addition on and resloping their property, that can have detrimental side
You're right.
effects, right?
You're absolutely right.
And so there just has to be a balance of, I don't want a resident to spend 10 grand to have an injury, I don't. But I also don't want a resident putting a huge addition on their home, regrading their whole property,
Flooding the
and
neighbor's lot.
flooding the neighborhood,
You're
or
right.
disturbing a waterway.
There's gotta be
Valid-
something
It's
So
a valid point.
there has to be some balance here.
You know, and then I see,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
and then I see no exemptions for farms. What happens when a farmer clears his field? Letter of the law, is he required to follow this? Cause he regrades his field. So I don't see exemptions for farms in here.
With the
Either.
management plans, but that's not all farms.
Okay, okay.
For what it's worth, when I did the property maintenance ordinance, I went through 17 drafts, so I have no sympathy.
Yeah, this is all
We're
part of,
way more than
this
that.
is us doing our job. Don't be offended by
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
It's
this
not.
isn't directed at anyone.
All right,
I only confirm.
Susie, I'll recap this at the end, but I'm gonna ask you to have, Bill Ryden, or Nancy, you can relay this to Nancy, Bill Ryden and, Roger Thomas in to discuss this ordinance.
And I would, do you mind if I say something?
Sure.
I would add Greg to that list. So it'll just be a very.
I'm
efficient
sorry,
use of your time.
that would be a conflict if he was. No, I can't do that. He's not he's not one of our hired professionals. He's a chairman of our land use board.
Oh,
We'll handle
is
that.
that-
Okay, everyone. Is everyone good with that immediate solution to this? Comfortable with that, everyone? Consent?
Yes.
Okay, good, let's move forward. Garden Club is being pulled. Jill is still doing some legwork on that with Nancy. Let's move on to minutes. We'll do a consent agenda for both the executive session meeting minutes of March 28th and the regular meeting minutes of March 28th. Motion and second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Okay, when you're ready, Susie, a roll call?
Councilwoman Dietrich,
Abstain.
Councilman Lemma,
Yes.
Councilwoman Murphy,
Yes.
Councilman Portella,
Aye.
Council President Sweeney,
Aye.
Councilwoman Weigel.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Susie, you ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I'm gonna do these resolutions individually, cause I have to add one, and I'll explain that when I get to it. So let's start with 8623, and this is a resolution enter into an agreement with Princeton Hydro for 2023 regular visual dam inspection of Liberty Park Dam. Motion and second, please.
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Second.
Susie, when you're ready, a roll call, please.
Councilwoman Dietrich,
Yes.
Councilman Lemma,
Yes.
Councilwoman Murphy,
Yes.
Councilman Portella,
Aye.
Council President Sweeney,
Aye.
Councilwoman Weigel.
Aye.
very good. Let's move on to Resolution 87-23, which is appointing Raisha Franklin as a rental inspector for the borough. A motion and second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Susie, when you're ready, a roll call for 87-23.
Councilwoman Dietrich,
Yes.
Councilman Lemma,
Yes.
Councilwoman Murphy,
Yes.
Councilman Cortello,
Aye.
Council President Sweeney,
Aye.
Councilwoman Weigel.
Aye.
Okay, very good, that passes. Now, you all have a resolution that was provided under separate cover to you. This came over the wire, believe it or not, this afternoon. It was too late to revise the agenda and post it, so I just told Susie we will deal with it now, so I am adding it to the resolutions list. And this is gonna be Resolution 90-23, and it's authorizing the submission of a grant application to the ANJEC, which is the New Jersey Environmental Commission, Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, for an invasive species plant removal. And the reason I added this in last minute is the application deadline is just a few days from now, prior to our next council meeting. So, motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that, because it came to you last minute? Okay,
Just one question, the 1,500, that's to cover the actual removal of plants?
Yes,
Okay.
okay.
And the DEP permit.
Susie, when you're ready, a roll call, please.
Councilwoman Dietrich,
Yes.
Councilman Lemma,
Yes.
Councilwoman Murphy,
Yes.
Councilman Cortello,
Aye.
Council President Sweeney,
Aye.
Councilwoman Weigel.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to bill list, 88-23 resolution number. Does the council, do any council members have any item that need to be pulled for discussion? Just so everyone knows, I did find one on here that I believe is an error. I already wrote Dale on it to see what it is. And I'm happy to tell you if you'd like to know. No items to pull. I will read the total amount of $1,077,430.80. A motion and a second, please, to approve 88-23.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so Susie, when you're ready, a roll call, please.
Councilwoman Dietrich,
Yes.
Councilman Lemma,
Yes.
Councilwoman Murphy,
Yes.
Councilman Cortello,
Abstain.
Council President Sweeney,
Aye.
Councilwoman Weigel.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Let's do mayor's punch list. Mark needs to get Ben Spinelli, Giordano's contact so he can do a presentation for Land Use Board on Highlands. Susie, I have 3 things for you. You're going to put Highlands on as a discussion item for the second meeting in May. You're going to put on the next agenda a signage discussion by Eric Cortello. Okay, and you'll also relay to Nancy to please set up a meeting to have Bill Ryden and Roger Thomas come in to discuss the proposed ordinance regarding disturbances.
Okay.
Okay? Great. Moving on. Public comments, agenda items only. We'll start with those in the audience. 3 minutes per person, please. Does anybody in the audience have anything they'd like to comment on regarding the agenda? Seeing nobody, I'll close it to those in presence. Anybody online who wishes to comment on the agenda? Nope, seeing none, we will move on. Does anybody from the council, I'm gonna go out of order here and you'll understand why in a second. Does anybody from the council have anything for further business, any further business? Okay, we're gonna do this a little differently because of the way the recorder's working tonight, which is some technical issues. What we're gonna do is we're gonna leave the recorder on, we're going to adjourn this meeting, then we're gonna reopen the meeting, do the resolution to go into executive, turn the recorder off, and finish our business in executive. Everyone follow that? Okay, very good.
We don't
Mark,
need,
you cannot do that.
we need to come out of executive to make a decision.
Yeah, yes, we need to come out of the executive to do a
So we
decision,
can't
so I'll do that at the end, Nancy.
Okay, as you said, you can't adjourn a meeting when this is part of the resolution. When this is part of the agenda.
we may not be able to get the recorder started afterwards, so we'll just play that by ear then,
That's fine.
okay?
But Susie can write down the minutes for after the executive session if the recorder doesn't come back on, and that covers us,
Correct.
correct?
That's correct.
All right, and Susie, before you shut the recorder off, let me look at it with you, there might be a way to pause it,
Okay.
all right?
There is a way to pause it, Mark, but you don't wanna take that chance because you're gonna be in executive session.
I understand
She
that, but
doesn't
you have
want
to,
it to come off.
you have to pause it anyway.
Well, we can,
No, she's afraid
I
it'll
can
start
start
up
it,
on
just
us.
take a couple, just take a minute. You have to be patient.
Okay.
Mark, she's afraid that the pause won't stick. It'll go back on like the TV does when you pause it.
All right. Okay. All right, in that case, I'm going to ask, before we adjourn the meeting, for a motion and second to move into executive session.
So moved.
Okay, Susie, a roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Dietrich,
Yes.
Brad, don't leave yet.
Councilman Lemma.
Yes.
Councilwoman Murphy.
Yes.
Councilman Portello.
Aye.
Council President Sweeney.
Aye.
Councilwoman Waggle.
Aye.
Okay, action may or may not be taken after executive session. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight and joining us for a council meeting. It's always appreciated. If you don't choose to stay around till the very end, our next council meeting is on Tuesday, April 25th at 7 o'clock p.m.
Thank you.
All right? Brad, I
Thank
just
you.
need to ask you a question real quick.
And Susie, you'll need to shut off both the YouTube stream and the GoToMeeting.
Yeah, that would be a hoot if we,
Yeah.
if we shut one down and
You
not
can do
the other.
those now, Susie. That's why I'm talking about it.